Lily and James's big day was filled with joy, except for James's mom, Maryanne, who clearly didn't approve. She spent the day making snide remarks, trying to steal the spotlight. In a dramatic turn, she faked needing a break, sneaked upstairs, and swiped the wedding ring James had picked for Lily, slipping it onto her finger. She thought she was doing her son a favor. However, her scheme unraveled when James noticed the missing ring on her finger during the ceremony. Everybody was left in stunned silence, awaiting her explanation. But it was James's response that left everyone, especially his mother, completely speechless. "Is that Lily's ring?" James said, stunned by what he saw. He pointed at his mother's finger, which sported a beautiful, shiny wedding ring. Maryanne looked at her hand and tried to play it off. "Oh, this old thing? I inherited this ring from my grandmother," she lied through her teeth. But James didn't believe it. He would recognize the ring he chose out of thousands. He quickly turned to face his best man to tell him he found the ring. "Really? Where?" Freddie, James's best man, exclaimed. "Shh!" James hushed. Since his mother refused to own up to what she had done, he had something in mind that would be the best payback for her, but it had to remain secret for now. The wedding eventually continued, even though James hadn't told anyone he had found the ring. He had something in mind that would haunt his mother's memory for the rest of her life. But why had his mother stolen the ring and put it on her own finger? What was James planning on doing? And would she give it back to Lily and James? James's mother had always been a topic of discussion in their relationship. Of course, James loved her deeply, as she was his mother, but she also caused most of James and Lily's fights. Lily never felt like she was enough for Maryanne, which wasn't strange. Everyone knew how strong-minded Maryanne could be about James's relationships. She had been like this through all of them. Most of James's previous relationships had broken up because of Maryanne. She was very protective of James, as she would describe it herself. However, it felt more like she was a little obsessed with him. He was the only family member she had left after the passing of her husband, so no one blamed her, but it was definitely something Lily had to learn to live with. Luckily for James, Lily had a very strong-minded father, so she knew all too well how to handle someone like that. Whenever Maryanne would give her unsolicited advice, Lily wouldn't shy away from speaking her mind. It wasn't always very helpful, as it only made Maryanne dislike Lily even more. But Lily didn't care. Not yet, at least. Because what Maryanne did on her wedding day changed everything. The day started out great. There were the usual wedding jitters, but nothing to be worried about. Lily got ready with her mother and bridesmaids, and James was already suited up at the venue, making sure everything was in place and going smoothly. The son of James's best friend, Freddie, was going to be the ring bearer, so James told Freddie where he kept them. What James didn't know, however, was that his mother was eavesdropping on their conversation. Hearing the rings were being kept in James's dressing room gave her an idea that would ruin her son's wedding day. Just as all the guests arrived and began to take their seats, Maryanne said she needed a quick bathroom break and sneaked up the stairs. She quickly found James's dressing room and searched for the rings while making sure not to touch anything. She left behind all other valuable items, including James's ring, and quietly left the room. Once outside, she slid the ring on her ring finger and hurried back downstairs. She was only in the room for a few seconds, but the damage she did was tremendous. On her way back to the wedding venue, she bumped into Freddie but played it off as if he had done something wrong. It was the kind of manipulation that she thrived in. After that, she quietly sat down on her assigned seat and waited for all hell to break loose. Which didn't take long, as a few minutes later, Freddie hurriedly speed-walked to James and whispered something in his ear. Freddie looked as if he had seen a ghost, and Maryanne could almost see the color draining from her son's face as he heard the news of the missing ring. She had to try really hard not to smile, as her plan was working out, just as she had hoped. Some might find it cruel, but in Maryanne's eyes, she was doing her son a favor. When James suddenly left the room in a hurry, everyone knew something was amiss. He ran to his dressing room to see for himself that the ring really was missing. Freddie hurried after him and found James sitting on the ground with his hands in his hair. "That ring was worth 4 times my monthly salary," he said with a trembling voice. Freddie told James he would not rest until he found the ring. "It has to be here somewhere," Freddie determinedly said. He began to scour through the room, looking in every nook and cranny for the shiny golden ring. Sadly, he quickly realized that finding such a small ring was a very difficult task. It could be anywhere. Suddenly, the wedding planner knocked on the door. She was wondering what the 2 men were doing, as the wedding should have already started. Her eyes grew wide with shock when James told her about the missing ring. "Please, Sophie, don't tell Lily yet," he urged the wedding planner. Sophie agreed. They didn't want to make Lily even more stressed out. While the 3 of them frantically searched for the ring, Maryanne sat on her seat, staring right at it. She turned it around her finger, admiring every inch of it. She couldn't help but feel a bit jealous, as her late husband had never bought a ring like that for her. Now that the ring was missing, she figured it was only a matter of time before the wedding was cancelled. James burst through the wedding venue doors, his eyes red and his face a mess. He was looking everywhere, desperate and wild. Guests whispered and shifted uncomfortably, watching him storm through the crowd. James ignored them all, his focus entirely on finding his mother. He dodged waiters and bypassed decorations, his suit jacket flapping behind him. Everyone's eyes followed him, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. Maryanne stood from her seat, smoothing her dress, a mixture of concern and guilt on her face. She stepped forward, her arms open, ready to embrace James. She called out to him softly, hoping to offer some comfort, but James barely glanced at her. He was on a mission. The guests watched, their murmurs growing louder. Maryanne's attempt at comfort seemed lost in the chaos, her expression turning to one of confusion and slight fear. James finally spotted his mother and made a beeline towards her. He grabbed her hand, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Is that Lily's ring on your finger?" he asked, his tone icy. Maryanne tried to pull her hand back, but James was firm. The guests craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse of the drama unfolding. Maryanne's face flushed with embarrassment as she met her son's accusing gaze. Maryanne, caught off guard, stammered out a lie. "This ring! It's from my great-grandmother," she claimed, her voice shaking. James just stared at her, disbelief written all over his face. The guests whispered among themselves, sensing the tension. Maryanne tried to maintain her composure, but the lie was transparent. James's stare intensified, and Maryanne's confidence wavered under the weight of her son's disbelief. James, realizing his mother wouldn't come clean easily, started to devise a plan. He released her hand and stepped back, his mind racing with ideas for how to turn the tables on her. He glanced around the room, noting the curious and concerned faces of their guests. James knew he had to act fast to resolve the situation without ruining the wedding day further. He turned and signaled Freddie over, whispering his newfound plan. James pulled Freddie aside, his voice low and urgent. "I know where the ring is, but it's not with me yet," he confessed. Freddie's eyes widened, confused but intrigued. James looked around to make sure no one was listening. They were in a corner now, guests milling about, unaware of the drama. Freddie nodded, ready to help. James had a plan, but it needed to be executed perfectly. Despite the missing ring drama, the wedding march began. James stood at the altar, his face a mix of emotions. Guests turned their heads as music filled the venue. Maryanne's hand twitched, the ring still snug on her finger. She looked around, noticing the whispers, but remained seated. James glanced at her, then away, focusing on the entrance. The ceremony had to continue, with or without the ring. Maryanne sulked back in her seat, her plan crumbling around her. She had thought her actions would stop the wedding or at least delay it. But there she was, watching as everything proceeded. Her son seemed to have something up his sleeve, and it irked her. She tried to appear indifferent, but her disappointment was palpable. Guests nearby sensed her mood, casting curious glances her way. Lily, holding her father's arm, started down the aisle. She looked stunning, but her eyes searched for James, sensing something was off. Her brow was furrowed, a slight worry visible. Guests stood, admiring her beauty, but also noting the tension. James watched her approach, his love clear, but his stress not entirely hidden. Lily reached the altar, her smile bright but cautious, as she looked into James's eyes. At the altar, Lily and James exchanged a look that held a mix of emotions. Maryanne, from her seat, couldn't help but feel a sting of satisfaction seeing the tension. She observed them speaking quietly to each other, their voices too low for anyone else to hear. Guests watched, sensing the undercurrents, but not understanding the full story. Maryanne's heart had a glimmer of happiness, despite knowing her actions had contributed to this moment. At the altar, James leaned in, whispering to Lily about the ring's whereabouts and Maryanne's involvement. His words were soft but clear, meant only for her. Lily's eyes widened in shock as she absorbed the news. The guests watched, unaware of the exchange, seeing only a tender moment. James's expression was serious, his gaze locked on Lily, ensuring she understood without alarming anyone around them. As the truth sunk in, Lily felt anger bubbling up inside her. The idea that Maryanne would go to such lengths on their wedding day was unthinkable. She took a deep breath, trying to control her emotions. James watched her closely, ready to intervene if necessary. Their hands squeezed tighter, a silent pact between them. Lily's mind raced with thoughts of confrontation, but James's presence was calming, a reminder of the bigger picture. Seeing Lily's distress, James quickly reassured her. "I have a plan," he murmured, his voice steady and confident. Lily looked at him, her anger momentarily paused by his assurance. Around them, the ceremony continued unnoticed, the guests lost in their own anticipation of the vows. James's promise was a lifeline, pulling Lily back from the brink of a public spectacle. She nodded, letting her trust in him anchor her emotions. With James's plan in mind, Lily straightened up, her posture commanding. She plastered on a radiant smile, the picture of a blissful bride, masking her inner turmoil. Their hands still joined. She drew strength from James, her resolve hardening. The guests saw only happiness, unaware of the storm brewing beneath. Lily's eyes sparkled, not with anger now, but with determination. She was ready to face whatever came their way, together with James. The officiant's voice broke through, signaling the start of their vows. Lily, still holding on to James's hand, began to speak. Her voice was clear and strong, her words echoing through the venue. She spoke of love, commitment, and overcoming challenges together. James listened intently, his admiration for her evident. The guests were captivated, hanging on every word, unaware of the drama that had unfolded just moments before. Lily's vows were a testament to their bond, unshaken by the day's events. As Lily poured her heart out, James was lost in her words, the issue of the ring slipping from his mind. He looked at her, truly seeing the woman he was about to marry, feeling his love deepen. Her vows spoke of a future filled with love, understanding, and resilience. James felt a wave of emotion, his heart swelling with pride and love. At that moment, nothing else mattered but Lily and their future together. Now it was James's turn. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. His vows were a mix of promises, love, and a touch of humor that only Lily would understand. He spoke of their journey, the challenges they'd faced, and the life they'd build together. His voice was steady, his gaze locked on Lily, conveying every emotion he felt. The guests listened, moved by the sincerity and depth of his words. While the room was filled with emotion, one guest remained distinctly unimpressed. Maryanne. She sat, a neutral expression on her face, unaffected by the heartfelt vows. Her demeanor was calm, almost detached, as if she was somewhere else entirely. The contrast between her indifference and the warmth radiating from the rest of the guests was stark. She observed the ceremony, her thoughts hidden behind a mask of apathy. At the end of his vows, James took everyone by surprise. "Could we have a moment outside?" he asked the officiant, his voice calm but firm. The request was unusual, prompting curious whispers among the guests. Lily looked at him, a question in her eyes, but James offered a reassuring smile. The officiant nodded, puzzled but compliant. James gently squeezed Lily's hand, signaling that everything was under control, as they paused the ceremony. James and the officiant stepped outside, leaving the guests buzzing with speculation. The air was cooler here, a momentary escape from the intensity inside. James explained his situation briefly, his words measured. The officiant listened intently, understanding the delicacy of the situation. They discussed quietly, formulating a plan that would respect the ceremony's sanctity and resolve the ongoing issue. James was determined, his resolve clear in his posture and expression. James took Lily's hand, and together with the officiant, they quietly slipped into a back room. The guests were left murmuring, their eyes wide with curiosity. The trio's sudden disappearance sparked a flurry of guesses and whispers, everyone trying to piece together the puzzle. The wedding had taken an unexpected turn, and the air buzzed with questions. What could be so important that it couldn't wait until after the ceremony? With the main players gone, Freddie stepped up. He joked, shared funny stories about James and Lily, and even started a trivia game about the couple. His efforts were a hit, laughter filling the room, easing the tension. Guests were entertained, their focus shifted from the mysterious absence to the fun at hand. Freddie's quick thinking and charm turned what could have been an awkward wait into a memorable part of the celebration. Maryanne, feeling sidelined, couldn't stand the suspense. She stood, announcing loudly that she demanded to know what was happening in the back room. Her voice cut through the laughter, turning heads. The atmosphere shifted. Guests watched, anticipating drama. Maryanne's insistence on being involved, on breaking into the private meeting, added another layer of tension. Her actions were unexpected, the need for control evident in her outburst. As Maryanne attempted to storm the back room, Freddie was quick on his feet. He stepped in front of her, his hand gently but firmly grasping her arm. "You need to stay here," he said, his tone polite but firm. Freddie's intervention stopped her in her tracks, drawing murmurs from the crowd. He guided her back to her seat, a smooth move that prevented further escalation. The guests watched, intrigued by the unfolding drama. In the seclusion of the back room, James shared his plan with Lily and the officiant. He spoke with conviction, his idea clearly well thought out. Lily listened, her initial worry turning to admiration for James's ingenuity. The officiant nodded, impressed by the creativity and the effort to keep the wedding spirit alive. They all agreed to the plan, ready to put it into action. The secret shared in that room bonded them further, a united front against the challenge. When James and Lily walked back into their wedding, the air felt different, thicker with tension. They scanned the room, noticing the guests' anxious faces and the awkward silence that had settled. Even the decorations seemed to droop a bit, as if sensing the mood. They held hands tighter, bracing themselves. It was clear that Maryanne's earlier outburst had left a mark on the atmosphere, and now they had to face whatever was next. Before the ceremony could resume, Maryanne stood, her movements drawing immediate attention. "I need to say something," she declared, her voice cutting through the lingering unease. Guests turned to look at her, some curious, others wary. James and Lily exchanged a glance, uncertainty flashing between them. Maryanne's timing was impeccable and terrible all at once. The room fell silent, everyone waiting for what she would say next. No one could stop Maryanne as she made her way to the altar, asking for a microphone. Her determination was clear, her steps confident. James and Lily could only watch as she positioned herself to address everyone. The officiant hesitantly handed her the microphone, and with it, the floor. Guests shifted in their seats, the anticipation palpable. Maryanne had the spotlight now, and she intended to use it. With the microphone in hand, Maryanne started to share her life story, weaving in how she gave James her last name. She spoke of the legacy of their family name and expressed her happiness that Lily would be part of it. Her words were skillfully chosen, designed to tug at heartstrings and paint her in a sympathetic light. However, Lily, standing beside James, could see through the manipulation. She remained silent, knowing something Maryanne didn't. Lily listened to Maryanne's story, her face neutral but her eyes sharp. She understood the game Maryanne was playing, using this moment to rewrite the narrative and win back favor. Lily felt the weight of the guests' eyes on them, measuring her reaction, but she held her peace, a calm before the storm. She knew the plan James had set in motion was moments away from unfolding, and with it, a dramatic shift in the day's events. With Maryanne's speech concluded, the wedding atmosphere shifted back to celebration. Music started, and everyone joined in singing James and Lily's favorite song. The melody wrapped around the couple like a warm embrace, uniting everyone in a moment of harmony. Smiles spread, the earlier tension dissolving into the air. James and Lily looked at each other, their love for the moment and each other evident in their eyes. The officiant brought the ceremony to its climax. "It's time," he announced, prompting James and Lily to prepare for their final act as fiancés. The room hushed in anticipation, every guest's attention fixed on the couple. James took Lily's hands in his, their eyes locked. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the culmination of their journey together. Excitement and love charged the air, palpable to everyone present. As James and Lily kissed, the room erupted in cheers. It was a kiss that seemed lifted from the pages of a fairy tale, full of love, promise, and a touch of magic. Guests stood, clapping and whistling, celebrating the newlyweds. The joy was infectious, spreading through the room like wildfire. This was a moment of pure happiness, a perfect start to James and Lily's life together. The kiss symbolized their union, witnessed by all their loved ones. Instead of exiting the ceremony space, James and Lily turned back to their guests, a sparkle of mischief and excitement in their eyes. "We have one more thing," James announced, his voice carrying over the lingering applause. The guests, taken aback, fell into a curious silence. This was uncharted territory. No one knew what to expect. James and Lily shared a knowing look, their next move promising to be as unforgettable as the day itself. "Please, join us in the reception room," Lily invited, her voice bright with anticipation. She and James wanted everyone to be part of their final surprise. The guests, intrigued and eager, began to move as one towards the reception area, buzzing with guesses and excitement. The energy was electric, everyone ready for the unveiling of the mysterious announcement. James and Lily led the way, their hands clasped together, a united front ready to share their joy. Freddie, just as in the dark about the plan as the guests, led the way to the reception room. His usual confidence was tinged with curiosity. He kept glancing back, trying to gauge the mood. The guests followed, a mix of excitement and puzzlement on their faces. Freddie's role as the impromptu guide added another layer to the unfolding mystery, his steps hesitant as they neared the pitch-black room. As the door to the reception room opened, a wave of darkness greeted the guests. The unexpected blackout halted everyone in their tracks, murmurs of confusion spreading. No one dared to flip a light switch, the collective uncertainty holding them back. The darkness seemed intentional, part of the surprise, leaving guests to wonder and whisper about what could possibly come next in this carefully orchestrated evening. In the pitch-black room, the sound of cautious footsteps and soft apologies filled the air. Guests bumped into each other, trying to find a safe spot without causing a commotion. The slight chaos was lighthearted, laughter mingling with the occasional "oops" and "sorry." It was an unusual start to a reception, the disorientation fostering a sense of camaraderie among the guests as they navigated the unfamiliar terrain together. Just as the last guest stepped into the darkness, the door shut, sealing the room in anticipation. Suddenly, music began to play, a melodious sign that the surprise was about to unfold. The choice of song, familiar yet suspenseful, hinted at the joy and celebration to come. The shift from confusion to eager anticipation was palpable, the guests now united in their curiosity about what James and Lily had planned. The DJ's voice crackled through the microphone, slicing through the music with a clear directive. "Get ready for the newlyweds!" Excitement surged through the room, the earlier uncertainty replaced by a buzz of readiness. Guests shuffled, finding their footing in the dark, their senses heightened in anticipation of James and Lily's entrance. The announcement was the spark that lit the fuse of excitement. Everyone braced for the reveal. As the lights flickered on, everyone's eyes were drawn to a large screen displaying "Mr. and Mrs. Becking" in bold, glowing letters. The sudden illumination and the message it carried washed over the crowd in waves of shock and awe. The room, just moments ago, filled with the murmur of anticipation, now echoed with gasps and whispers. The dramatic reveal left the guests blinking, adjusting not just to the light, but to the unexpected announcement. The sign hit Maryanne hardest. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, eyes wide as saucers. For a moment, it looked like she might faint, her complexion turning a shade paler. Around her, guests whispered and nudged each other, their attention split between the sign and Maryanne's dramatic reaction. The air was thick with tension, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Maryanne at the center of the storm. No sooner had the room settled than Maryanne began to yell, insisting there had been a mistake. Her voice, loud and incredulous, demanded attention. Lily's father, standing nearby, chimed in with agreement, his brows furrowed in confusion and concern. The collective mood shifted from shock to curiosity, guests turning to each other with raised eyebrows, wondering if indeed an error had occurred on such a crucial detail of the day. Then, as if on cue, the doors swung open, and Lily and James made their entrance, hand in hand, smiles lighting up their faces. Their appearance, radiant and confident, cut through the tension like a ray of sunshine. The room's energy shifted, eyes turning to the couple as they walked in, their smiles promising answers and perhaps an explanation. Their entrance was both an answer and an invitation to understand more. Standing before their family and friends, Lily and James radiated happiness. "There hasn't been a mistake," James announced, his voice filled with warmth. "Just a last-minute change," Lily added, her smile unwavering. The room fell silent, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Guests looked on, curiosity piqued, as the couple prepared to share the story behind the unexpected announcement on the screen. James approached his mother with a calm, determined stride. Without a word, he gently asked for her hand, and from it, he carefully slid Lily's wedding ring off her finger. The room watched in silence, the tension palpable. Maryanne's face was a mix of emotions, but she didn't resist. James then turned to Lily, slipping the ring onto her finger where it belonged, sealing the moment with a loving glance. With Lily's ring finally in its rightful place, James addressed the gathered friends and family. He shared their decision to adopt Lily's mother's last name, setting aside his own. This revelation drew mixed reactions, but most were touches of smiles and nods. It was a testament to their unity and respect for one another, a choice that spoke volumes about the future they envisioned together, breaking from tradition for their new beginning. James's next words filled the room with a sobering clarity. He recounted how his mother had always harbored doubts about their union, culminating in her taking Lily's ring, a symbolic act of her dissent. The confession hung heavy in the air, a candid acknowledgement of the strife that had shadowed their relationship. It was a moment of honesty, laying bare the challenges they faced from within their own family. The weight of James's words and the unveiling of her actions were too much for Maryanne. With a mix of hurt and indignation, she quietly exited the wedding party, leaving behind a trail of whispered speculation. Her departure was swift, a silent confirmation of her struggle to accept the choices her son had made. The wedding party watched her leave, a poignant moment that marked a turning point in the evening. Despite the dramatic turn of events, James and Lily chose not to let it overshadow their celebration. They moved forward with the reception, their spirits undampened by the earlier confrontation. Laughter and music soon filled the room again, a testament to their resilience and determination to focus on the joy of their union. Their decision to continue celebrating was a reflection of their commitment to each other, undeterred by external strife. A few weeks post-wedding, James felt it was time to bridge the gap between him and his mother. He picked up the phone, dialed her number, and waited for her to answer. Their conversation started tentatively, but as they spoke, the ice began to melt. They touched on various topics, cautiously avoiding the sore points at first, then gradually addressing the wedding incident. It was a step towards healing. Over time, their conversations grew more frequent and open. James and Lily explained their decision to keep Lily's mother's last name, emphasizing the respect and love they held for her support. Maryanne listened, her initial resistance softening as she understood their perspective. The talks were sometimes difficult, filled with emotion, but necessary. They all navigated the delicate process of reconciliation, seeking common ground while respecting each other's feelings. James and Lily shared with Maryanne how Lily's mother had been a consistent positive force in their relationship. They wanted to honor that unwavering support and love by carrying her last name into their future together. This decision, they explained, was more than a gesture. It was a tribute to the kindness and acceptance Lily's mother had always shown them, something that had been instrumental in their journey together. Maryanne, reflecting on the discussions and the reasons behind James and Lily's choice, began to make peace with their decision. She realized that staying part of her son's life meant accepting his choices, even those she initially disagreed with. The importance of her relationship with James and Lily outweighed her reservations about the name change. It was a turning point for Maryanne, a step towards embracing her son's new family dynamics. Since those conversations, a new calm settled over James, Lily, and Maryanne's relationship. The air of tension that once loomed had dissipated, replaced by a cautious optimism. They found a way to move forward without recurring drama, focusing on building a positive future together. This period of peace allowed them all to appreciate the value of understanding and compromise, highlighting the strength of their family bonds despite past disagreements.